2023, the year where corporations made their products worse while raising prices, AI got so good that it makes you question your own existence, and writers strike so hard that it would have been cheaper to just pay them better. But hey, at least we got some really good video games that distract us from the waking nightmare that is late-stage capitalism. Like seriously, anyone who says that 2023 was a bad year for games needs to play more games. The AAA space released a lot of stinkers, but indie games have been so good that I've already forgotten that these games exist. Like dude, if you want to kill vampires, don't play Redfall, play Vampire Survivors. It blows my mind that so many people complain about how bland video games have gone and not even bother playing Hi-Fi Rush or Pizza Tower or Tears of the Kingdom or Cassette Beasts or Metroid Prime Remastered or Spider-Man 2 or Octopath 2 or Sea of Stars or Pikmin 4. You know, actually good games that were released last year. You don't have to play every big game that comes out. You don't even have to play games that came out recently. Play Chrono Trigger or Hollow Knight or Crosscode or Super Mario 64. It was like a bazillion games, man. Here's the ones I played in 2023. Also, just a heads up, this is still scripted, but I probably won't be doing much video editing for this video. Just want to have some fun and get my thoughts out there. This is probably just going to be a very nice looking slideshow, so I might as well treat this like a podcast if you're into that. I decided to start the year by catching up on the Sonic-like genre, which is a term I just made up because it consists of like 2 series. The point is, Freedom Planet 2 is insanely good. The first game was already pretty great. My only main gripes were that a lot of the stages went on for too long and the cutscenes were too long, despite the story itself being pretty good. Instead of making the levels shorter, Freedom Planet 2 decided to make the stages so good that you don't care that they often go on for 10 minutes. Each stage has its own mechanic and music to keep things fresh throughout. It's kind of bonkers how Freedom Planet 2 has so many good stages. There's hardly ever a mechanic that feels tacked on. Nothing overstays is welcome, and the level themes are rarely reused. The combat's been improved too. It was really fun to learn boss patterns, and I never felt like anything was needlessly hard. And you know, the Sonic inspiration is obviously there, but Freedom Planet 2 ends up deviating from Sonic so much that it doesn't feel like a Sonic game anymore. And that's a good thing. It stands completely on its own. Like, I honestly forgot that I was playing a sequel to a game that started out as a Sonic ROM hack, especially with the story. The tone is a lot more consistent than the first game, and I ended up really liking all the characters by the end, even the antagonist. Like, this is a story about people being racist and altering history books to push a water dragons are bad agenda, and it's like, damn. I thought I was playing a game about a purple dragon that runs fast. I was caught off guard by how much fun I was having with Freedom Planet 2. I had more energy after playing it. Is this what fun is? I forget what joy feels like. The first game was one I at least replayed levels from every now and then, but I don't think I ever did a second full playthrough. By contrast, I played Freedom Planet 2 3 times in like 2 weeks and even got the true ending as Lilac. I was tempted to play it a 4th time as Nira, but getting burnt out from playing it so much almost felt like a disservice to it. Can I retroactively put Freedom Planet 2 in S tier for the games I played in 2022? Because this game's awesome. You know, ignoring the fact that I actually did during editing. If you still want a fast-paced platformer after Freedom Planet, the closer you're getting that isn't about a blue hedgehog is Spark the Electric Jester. God, what a weird series. It was all made by mostly one dude who used to make Sonic ROM hacks. He started relatively small with the first game, which oddly shares a lot of similar design philosophies to Freedom Planet. There's more of a combat focus, but instead of multiple playable characters, there's different weapons to use that act as different playstyles. It ends up feeling like this bizarre fusion between Sonic and Kirby, and it works. Some stages go on for a little too long, but it's not too big of a deal when they're so varied and have unique mechanics. And some weapons are obviously better than others, like how Lance, Fire, and Hammer are easily the best damage dealers, and Wind breaks the platforming. But it's a pretty fun game regardless. Aside from only respawning with half health. Like, what's up with that? It was a great time though, with even greater music. Like, Jesus, they did not have to go this hard on the soundtrack. The Kickstarter was apparently just for the soundtrack, and honestly, money well spent. I can't really say the same about Spark 2 though. I guess people compare the first game to Freedom Planet too much, so this Pepper dude was just like, screw it, we're making Sonic Adventure now. I respect the ambition, but Spark 2 feels like a tech demo more than anything else. Like, it's enjoyable, it's well made enough, but a lot of stages end before they get interesting. You just run past everything with no repercussions. Even when you do have to fight, it's just mashing the attack button and occasionally guarding. It was a cool mechanic where the more attacks you guard, the stronger your attacks become, but it makes your attacks so powerful the bosses die in like 30 seconds. The story sucks too. They were trying way too hard. The first game was mostly this self-aware, quirky kind of story that was just meant to move the gameplay gameplay forward. Spark 2 is attempting to be something serious, but it's so serious that you can't take it seriously. I don't remember what happened, and I honestly don't care. Spark 1 felt like a fan game in a good way, but Spark 2 feels like a fan game in a bad way. If I didn't get the whole series for $20, I'd feel pretty ripped off about this one. It's over in 2 hours and ends just as it's getting kind of interesting. Again, I respect the ambition, but it just doesn't land. The music's not even good, except for like one song. What happened? Luckily, Spark 3 is everything as Spark 2 tried to be. Awesome music, awesome stages, super tight controls, cool locations, like this is just an awesome game. It's insane how you can have a character moving this fast while also controlling so tightly. You can move at unleashed levels of speed if you know what you're doing, and still do precise platforming on top of that. The best way to describe how good the game feels is that you can switch between rails with the press of a button, but I forgot that you could do that because manually jumping between them feels so natural. If that doesn't say how good the game is, I don't know what else will. The story even feels like this weird, self-indulgent fanfiction nonsense, which still isn't great, but at least it was actually entertaining. The plot twist at the end kind of comes out of nowhere though. I saw a Steam review for the first game that was something like, Sonic fans should play this to remind themselves they deserve nice things. And that's probably the best way to describe the Spark series. You know, it's kind of crazy how two Sonic-like indie games came out around the same time as Frontiers, and they both ended up being marginally better than Frontiers. Alright, let's actually talk about something that released in 2023. I haven't seen people collectively coming around on a game as quickly as Fire Emblem Engage. The game got a lot of hate when it first came out, but then a few months later, the reception was mostly positive. I think it's mainly because the game has a pretty weak opening and then gets better the further in you get. The early game has a lot of standard Fire Emblem tropes with pretty weak characters that get replaced by stronger and more likable ones later. Except Louise and Yunaka. We love and respect Louise and Yunaka in this house. I'd imagine that a lot of people wanted a more involved story coming off of Three Houses, and Engage doesn't have that. It mainly feels like an obligation to drive the gameplay forward, but I love how it embraces it. The main thing about Engage is these rings that give units the abilities of previous Fire Emblem characters. They also give you the most powerful ones really early on. Like, what if we gave the nearly unkillable Louise some of the best movement with Sigurd? You won't start to rely on these things, which throws the entire game on its head when they suddenly take them away from you. You don't get them back until the end game. You feel naked, and it's a really cool moment, especially when enemies use them against you and you already know firsthand how powerful these rings are. Like, when the game gets going, it gets going. I ended up really liking the cast overall, too. Alira is probably one of the better protagonists in the series because I love the dynamic of them being the only normal person in a world full of lovable weirdos, and they look like this. I just wish they'd keep the post-chapter chores to a minimum. Engage definitely doesn't have as bad as Three Houses. It's only like 20 minutes at most. But that adds up and makes the game way longer than it should be. Although maybe I was just resetting so much with how surprisingly difficult the game was. That was a fun surprise. I do wish the game was shorter though. It's the same length as Three Houses, and I honestly preferred when these games are 25 to 30 hours and not 70. Maybe I'm just a slow Fire Emblem player, I don't know. Now that I felt it went on for too long, it's just that long games can be annoying sometimes. Engage is basically just a classic Fire Emblem game made with modern design and presentation. It's not gonna blow your mind, but it's a great time. I've never really been a fan of rhythm games. They tend to get a little insane, but I do like a good stylized character action game, so Hi-Fi Rush was something I didn't know I needed. This is actually a pretty good way to get into this genre, because everything being in tune in the music really helps out with parry and dodge timings, and as someone who's garbage at rhythm games, I can get the beat down pretty easily. Although because I'm already used to this kind of game, the whole rhythm aspect to Hi-Fi Rush made it kinda easy. Because enemies attacked at the beat, I already knew when to dodge and parry, ironically making the game feel a bit too button matchy for me, and I was playing on hard. I get that that's the entire point of the game, but if you're used to character action games like this, you won't get much challenge here, save for the final boss and these annoying samurai robots. That's the thing, Hi-Fi Rush has so much style and charm that it doesn't really matter. This is a good-ass video game. We need more inventive and creative games like this in the big name space. It's kind of insane that it's only $30. Like, this is a $60 game that's just half priced and it's more polished than most $60 games. What? How? It was $22 during the Steam Winter Sale. That is madness. This thing was even shadow dropped with no marketing, and it apparently did reasonably well. Honestly, my only real issue with it is that I kind of wish it was like 2 or 3 hours shorter. Not that I felt it was dragging on or anything, I just felt kind of over it by the end. Like, I'd already seen everything already. But hey, it was a pretty great time anyway. Also, 9 Inch Nails kind of slaps. Let's move on to the other critically acclaimed game that was released in January and I didn't hear about it until it came out, Pizza Tower. January was actually a pretty stacked month looking back on it. I'm gonna be honest, I was mainly playing it for the aesthetics alone. This pixelated 90s Microsoft Paint-ass looking animation is perfection. This game is a joy to look at. Pizza Tower has this incredible unhinged energy. Peppino is a man that looks like he's about to snap and murder someone at all times, gets put in the most stressful situations possible. It's incredible that he hasn't committed several war crimes by now. Remember kids, be good, or else Peppino will burn your house down. I didn't end up caring about the actual game too much. It's kind of like Wario Land, which I've never really played it before. I at least enjoyed it, but lost interest halfway through. Really good music at least. Anyone capable of doing an all P-rank speedrun is a god among men. Speaking of gods among men, Dark Souls. I finally beat one, Demon Souls. This is a weird game. It's not exactly what I would call fun, but actually pushing yourself to overcome the challenges in front of you felt really satisfying. The more level select structure of the game made it easier to digest for me to learn the ropes. It was easy to tell when I was making progress, and if you're struggling somewhere, you can easily go to another area and come back when you're stronger. Although I was weirded out by how not hard the game is. Not that the game isn't hard, but it felt achievable the entire time. Even when I was struggling and pretty much always felt like I was on the cusp of victory. Just a little more practice and I can get through this. The game felt more like a test of patience than a test of raw skill. When played like that, I actually enjoyed it in a weird way. I'll probably get to the other games at some point, but they're definitely games you have to play at your own pace. You cannot binge them. There's times where you just can't do anything no matter how hard you try, so you have to know when to walk away and do something else. It's the kind of game I have to be in the mood for. I also replayed Bloodborne. Still didn't finish it. Not because I felt like I couldn't. I actually got to near the end of the game, but because Tears of the Kingdom came out. I'll get to that one later though, but hey, I beat one game in this series at least. I am finally a gamer. Now all I need to do to complete the transformation is to say something racist. So if you take a look at the games released in 2023, one game is not like the others. The murder of Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm in awe that this exists. This sounds like a thing you'd hear from Did You Know Gaming a decade from now. Did you know that on March 31st, 2023, Sega released The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, a visual novel where the characters attend a murder mystery party where Sonic plays a victim. We translated old Japanese-only websites to find out this game is actually a psyop by the Brazilian government. This game is an April Fool's joke, probably something they just did for marketing, but the game just rolls with the fact that it's a joke and has shockingly entertaining writing. It's not gonna blow your socks off, but it's an interesting way to spend a few hours. But let's just pretend that it didn't happen so people in the future can be just as surprised as we are that this exists. This is a real screenshot from the game. But let's get away from jokes and move toward peak. Xenoblade 3 got its story expansion in Future Redeemed, and it was incredible. It's not quite as good as the main game, but that's asking a bit too much. If you played Xenoblade 3, Future Redeemed's gameplay is basically what you'd expect. It's like Torno, whereas the remix of the main game. There's no class switching or Ouroboros transformations, but you instead have team attacks that function like a second talent art. They're also the only way to do smash and burst, so art combos are a lot harder to spam. I also really like how the DLC is basically just one big area. I get that there are probably system limitations preventing them from doing that in the main game, but it makes the world feel a lot more cohesive. Less clunky too, since you don't have to go through maps for like 20 different areas. Future Redeemed is more about the story for me though. It's a prequel to the main game like Torno was, but also wraps up a few loose ends lore-wise. That's probably the weirdest part about Future Redeemed. It has a lot more fan service and callbacks than the other games, and it relies on it a bit too much at times. Every other entry in the series, even Xenoblade 2's DLC, works as a standalone story, aside from maybe one or two things during the end of 2 and 3. Future Redeemed mostly works, but then the protagonists of the first two games are major characters along with their insanely implied children. Not to mention this big casual lore dump like halfway through the game that makes zero sense unless you've played the other games. And there's one scene near the end that only people who played every Xeno game will understand. If you know, you know. I'm not spoiling it. As someone who has played every game in the series, I felt my soul ascend to a higher plane of existence from this scene. But it's something that so few people have the same experience with that I feel bad most people won't scream in joy over gluing their eyes to subtitles and not paying attention to what's actually happening. I definitely like that the writers are willing to indulge themselves for once, but I prefer a narrative that's self-contained. Xenoblade 3 Future Redeemed was still fantastic, but it definitely reinforced my stance that you don't have to play the Xenoblade games in order, but you probably should. Luckily, I had enough time to digest Future Redeemed before my personality became Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. It's my game of the year, to the surprise of no one. Honestly, I was going to Tears with like no expectations, not only from the fact that we knew basically nothing about it before release, but mainly because it's a follow-up to one of my favorite games ever. So I should not go in expecting that, but again. I received that, but again. Breath of the Wild recently became my favorite Zelda game after replaying most of the 3D ones. I ended up not really enjoying the classic 3D Zelda style as much as I used to. Because of that, I ended up not missing the lack of dungeons anymore. So all I really needed from Tears of the Kingdom was a halfway decent follow-up, and it would still be one of the best games in the series. I have no clue how these people were able to do it, but they made Breath of the Wild look like a tech demo. They took the world of that game, made it like 2.5 times bigger, while also giving you the ability to glue stuff together like you were playing Gary's mod or something. Like, Ultra Hand is probably what caused the game to get delayed at least once. This game must have been a quality assurance nightmare. It paid off just from the sheer amount of stuff that you can do with this thing, but it reminded me that I am not creative enough for this. Don't get me wrong, Ultra Hand is badass. It's just something that I don't personally jive with. It slows the game down too much for me. Especially when you realize that putting a rocket on your shield or making a very long stick is almost always a valid solution. I had more fun with the exploration. The game may be reusing Breath of the Wild's map, but there's so many new things to do in it that it hardly feels like you're retreading old ground. There's an entire second overworld underground with lighthouses that correspond to shrine locations, so exploring one layer helps you out in the other. That is so damn cool, and it really reminds me of A Link Between Worlds. And I didn't even notice this on my own. It's so subtle that you have to figure it out yourself. Or feel like an idiot when your friends tell you about it instead. The sky isn't nearly as interesting. It can be kind of fun to figure out how to get to the different islands, but there's so little to do up here that I completely forgot about them by the end. I really have to wonder whether the series can even go from here though. The sky is quite literally no longer the limit. Maybe they could go to space, but that sounds so un-Zelda that I doubt they go in that direction. Regardless of how the series will sell over 10 million copies next time, Tears of the Kingdom is kinography of the highest caliber. It's so good that I didn't care that it cost $70, even though it really shouldn't. What higher praise could I give? While I have your attention, let's talk about a random-ass Doom mod. There was a map for Doom 2 released this year called My House, and it's one of the craziest things I've played in a while. It starts off with this standard map as a recreation of this dude's house, and it just gets more unhinged from there. The house and animations get more detail, and there's like 3 endings, and alternate dimensions, and a liminal space bathhouse. It's insane, man. It's not really something that I enjoyed playing, but I love seeing the ridiculous amount of stuffing you fit into one Doom 2 map. My House is one of those things where you just have to sit back and appreciate the raw amount of effort that was put into it. I don't have a decent transition, so I'm just gonna shove Cassette Beasts down your throat. This game is like if Pokemon and Zelda had a baby that didn't want their parents to know they played Digital Devil Saga. So yeah, this sounds like another Pokemon clone on the surface, but with some Zelda-like exploration, but no, it's not. Cassette Beasts is obviously Pokemon inspired. You collect monsters, types affect other types, you can remaster cassettes into stronger monsters. The stat system is basically identical, but that's mostly where the similarities end. This is his own beast entirely. Like, weaknesses don't actually do more damage, they just inflict different status conditions. For example, water rusts metal, so the metal type's defenses get lowered. Or how the air in this island is unusually conductive, so air types get electrified from electric moves and take damage each turn from it. That's another thing about this game. It's a bizarre premise. Basically, you self-insert OCs isekai into this weird alternate dimension, and you're stuck on this island with a bunch of people from other time periods and alternate realities. The essences of monsters on the island can be recorded on cassette tapes, and you can listen to those tapes to transform into them. No one knows why or how this works, but it's by far the best way to defend yourself. It's so out there, but it's interesting. The game does a lot with it. To top everything off, the Cassette Beasts are actually, you know, cool. A problem with a lot of monster collectors is that the character designs can be hit or miss. Like, I look at Temtem or Yokai Watch, and I'm not immediately drawn to anything. I don't see a monster or yokai or whatever and instantly think, ooh, me want one. Not the case in Cassette Beasts. I'm having this exact thought every 10 minutes. There's this hermit crab that uses a traffic cone for its shell. There's this seal dude with a diving helmet. There's a jackalope with devil horns and fallen angel wings that uses a street sign like a spear. There's an aristocrat vampire called Scampire. Dude, these designs are great. And your stats are determined by the wielder's level, so you can swap around tapes and try new setups without needing to grind. They may have weaker abilities because the tapes themselves don't need to be leveled up to get new stickers, but because they're stickers, you can take the abilities off of tapes they're not using and put them on the ones you are using, assuming they're compatible. It's awesome. I had a shockingly fantastic time with Cassette Beasts. I did not want to put the game down. My only issues is that it's pretty easy on the default difficulty, but you can make it harder or easier at any time. I was just having so much fun that it wasn't really a big deal. And I wish there was some kind of silhouette when you remaster tapes of split evolution paths. It would make it easier to tell what this thing turns into other than text descriptions. The Switch version could also run a bit better. It's pretty stuttery at times, but it didn't affect my enjoyment too much. Like really, play Cassette Beasts. Tears of the Kingdom may be an obvious game of the year for me, but this is a very easy second place. It almost feels like it was specifically made for me. I even went out of my way to complete the bestiary. The Pokedex, basically. How is this made by mostly 2 people? Like, there is a future for every monster combo in the game, and it was made by mostly 2 people. What the hell? In a strange turn of events, Sonic Frontiers actually got free updates that added new content, ending with a new free story expansion and new playable characters. Okay, sure, let's give it a shot. It's not very good. I just talked about my 2 favorite games from this year, so I guess I've talked about my least favorite game from this year now. I like that you can play as Amy, Knuckles, and Tails, but they don't really add that much to the game. There isn't any reason to play as them aside from being required, and nothing happens story-wise. Sonic's friends gather up the Chaos Emeralds for him while he climbs these towers to gain a new power or something. I don't remember exactly. It's not very important. The new gameplay sections feel like I'm playing a mod, and not in a good way. Everything feels very cheap and slapped together, and it's not always thought out very well. Like, there was one part where there was a puzzle to disable this laser as Tails, but you can literally just sidestep or damage boost through it. I couldn't figure out how to solve the puzzle, so I just skipped it. And those towers you climb as Sonic, there's no checkpoints, so if you fall off, you have to restart the entire climb. These sections feel like only up. This is not a compliment, but at least there was no NFTs involved. But the worst part of this entire thing is the mandatory boss rush. Basically, you have to fight the first 3 supersonic bosses in a row without any ring pickups throughout the fight and without any stat upgrades. It doesn't sound like much, but the time limit for these fights is so insanely strict that you have to be perfect. Like, make one mistake and you might as well reset kind of perfect. I played this on easy, by the way, and in being forced to replay these fights like this, it makes you realize how bland these fights really are. You can side loop Giganto and easily two-phase him, and most of the Wyvern fight is just waiting around so that you can parry him so that you can actually attack him. The part that made them fun was the insane spectacle and power trip to it, but when you take that away, they just aren't fun. It straight up forces you to optimize the fun out of these bosses. I'm astounded. They found a way to turn the best part of the game into the worst part of the game. And you go through all that just for a new final boss that barely works because the target refused to lock onto his weak point. They told you that the boss rush should give Supersonic a new power, but it just makes his perfect parries reflect attacks. That's it. Oh, but his eyes are blue now. No, who cares? Was it really worth going through so much garbage to get it? No. I'm probably just never playing this again because I just didn't have fun. You know, there's a problem when I was frequently thinking, Sonic 06 is looking real good right about now. Sonic 06 is probably an objectively worse game than this DLC, but at least I was actually enjoying myself. The final Horizon is just bad. Unfun and bad. Another game I didn't really jive with was The Messenger. Its developer also made Sea of Stars, and apparently it has a very Xenoblade-like connection to The Messenger, where you don't need to play it to understand Sea of Stars, but it hits harder if you do. I'd only played The Messenger for like an hour before this year, so why not actually attempt to play it? The game itself is pretty decent. It's a 2D side-scroller, kind of like Ninja Gaiden if it wasn't stupidly hard. And for most of the game, it just felt fine. Wasn't bad, wasn't great. But then it turns to a Metroidvania halfway through, and it's ironically where the game lost me. Because The Messenger's level design is made more like linear action stages, not non-linear areas you're supposed to explore. So it just feels like I'm running through levels I've already played instead of going through interconnected areas. It has this really cool time travel mechanic where you're switching between the present and future that reminds me of A Link to the Past or Guacamelee. But that's where the cool stuff ends. It just made navigation kind of annoying. The best parts of the game were places like the underwater shrine and the turquoise river. I don't remember their names exactly. They were cool because they felt like linear areas that took full advantage of the main mechanic. It's just that so much of the game does not work like this, and I was running around looking for these music notes with cryptic hints that I just completely lost interest near the end. It doesn't help that I didn't care for its sense of humor that much. Most of the game felt too much like, wow, look at how self-aware we are. Maybe I've just become a cynical old man in my ripe old age of 25, but I'm just not into that kind of jokes anymore, at least outside of memes or something. Look, if a part where you ride through floating islands in the sky and a dragon wasn't enough to keep me interested, there's just no hope for me liking it. So, what did I think of Sea of Stars? I've never got around to playing it. You know what, let's get all the stuff I didn't care for this year out of the way. Okay, so here's my hot take of the day. I didn't like Super Mario Bros. Wonder. I genuinely feel like I'm taking crazy pills from playing this game. I keep hearing everyone say it's one of the best 2D platformers ever made and it makes him feel like a kid again and all that stuff. But for me, it's like the most 7.5 out of 10 game I've ever played. It's good. It's well made. I like the new art direction. But playing it is so boring. Wonder barely feels different from New Super Mario Bros. To me. This feels like a game I already played 15 years ago and not in a good way. Even with all the weird stuff that happens from Wonder Flowers, that can only take you so far. Everything is so weird and bizarre that it just blends together and becomes boring. Probably the worst part of the game for me was randomly stumbling into the special world. Not because I hated it, but because I loved it. There was this one level where blocks appear and disappear in tune to the music, and it was a pretty neat level that took a few tries. But beating it opens up an even harder version of it. You need to be really precise and go at just the right pace, and it felt so awesome to get it right, even if it did take like 10-15 tries. I was like, okay, give me more of this. That was great. I'm finally having fun. But in order to play more of the special world, I needed to play more of the regular levels that are practically putting me to sleep. I was finally enjoying myself. Then the game just said, okay, that's enough fun for today. After the second world, I just felt so defeated mentally that I just stopped playing completely. I wasn't having fun with this. Why bother wasting any more energy on it? I mainly just went back to playing Octopath Traveler 2 because this was a pretty pleasant surprise for me. I played the first game and really liked it, but I don't know, just kind of dragged on after a while. The idea of 8 individual stories in one game was really cool. I just feel like they didn't do enough with it, especially since the individual characters didn't interact much beyond these optional travel banter conversations. But my big issue was how bosses often took like 20 to 30 minutes to kill. Maybe I was just playing the game wrong or something, but you couldn't do enough damage to beat them within a reasonable amount of time. The end of each chapter felt like a giant endurance test. They luckily fixed both of these issues in the second game. The different stories are still isolated from each other, but they feel more interconnected in subtle ways. Like how Cassidy, an apothecary doctor person, was taking care of injured soldiers in a flashback from the war that Hikari was fighting in. Stuff like that goes a long way to make the world feel a lot more alive and interesting. It helps that the stories themselves are more interesting. The first game tended to be really tropey and already done before. The appeal was that they were all in the same game, so you had a lot of variety. But they ran low on the kinds of overdone stories to tell for the character archetypes they have, so most of them are more interesting by default now. Like how Oswald is a scholar whose family was killed by a colleague. He was framed for his family's murder and thrown in prison, so he escapes prison and has to find the guy who killed his family and get revenge. Maybe it's not the most original thing ever, but it was enough to grab and keep my attention. I also really like Porticio's story. He's a merchant who grew up dirt poor, and he ends up needing to gather up the money to buy the rights to the steam engine to share the wealth of it, instead of one hyper-rich guy monopolizing the entire world. Whatever. This man, and I paraphrase, wants to destroy the devil that is poverty. Literally, this dude's first chapter has him build up an angry mob and beat up the richest guy in town. Porticio is so unfathomably based, it's unreal. They fixed the bosses having too much health by giving you better options for bigger damage, mainly through this new latent power mechanic where each character has their own unique boosts to their abilities. Like how Ochek can just do a ton of damage to either a single enemy or all enemies. So if you set this up right, the single brain-celled anime cat girl of the group can take out half the boss's health in one hit. It's hilarious. Despite selling over 1 million copies, I hardly heard anyone talk about this game. It feels like I'm one of like 5 people who actually played it, and I am definitely the only person who bought it on PS5. I really wish Square Enix actually advertised the game because it's a pretty massive improvement over the first game. So much that it was probably the 3rd best game of 2023 for me. So yeah, play Octopath Traveler 2. It's an awesome turn-based RPG. So Pikmin 4 came out this year. Considering how long we've been hearing about the damn thing, it's pretty surreal that it's not only real, but actually released. So, naturally, I haven't played Pikmin 4 yet. I played the other games instead. I've been wanting to play Pikmin for what feels like an eternity, so might as well play them now. And by now, I mean play Pikmin 1 mostly in 2022 and then not get around to actually finishing until 2023, but hey, details. Anyway, Pikmin 1 was pretty good. It definitely has a little bit of crust to it, mainly the Pikmin taking turns on the single collective brain cell they possess, but it definitely has its own uniqueness to it. The 30-day time limit to get all 30 parts is pretty easy to finish the game with, but it's just enough to make the game feel stressful in a good way. There's just a part of your brain that makes you think, oh god, do I have enough time to finish the game? And I'd imagine it'd be pretty satisfying to get that number down on replays. I finished in like 24 days, and I was really bad at it, so don't let that discourage you. It was a fun, but anxious time. Pikmin 2 doesn't have a time limit, so it was a lot more relaxed. Except for the parts where the developers wanted to bully the children who played it. The main goal this time is collecting treasure to repay the debt of the company that Olimar works for. And the main way to do that is through exploring caves. Time stands still in here, so you can take as much time as you need to get through these places. But to compensate, they made them way more difficult. Normally it's not a big deal, but then you have something like Frontier Cavern where boulders and rocks fall on you constantly, and it has a boss that infinitely respawns annoying enemies. Or the Submerged Castle, where you can only take in blue Pikmin, and you have to move fast before an invincible water monster chases you down and it practically becomes survival horror. You'd probably won't ever die in this game, but you'll lose so many Pikmin along the way that you won't be able to do much until you spend a day rebuilding your numbers. Unless you reset constantly like I do. That's Pikmin 2's saving grace. It's shockingly bullshit at times, but it's also very forgiving. If something catastrophic happens, just reset the game because it saves at the beginning of each floor. You don't have to worry about consequences too much, which makes it a lot more fun for me. I am awful at these kinds of games. Although I think I like Pikmin 1 better overall, because going for 100% and getting every treasure just has to go through too much bullshit. A 20-ish hour game like this just doesn't hold my attention as long. And this is the part where I talk about Pikmin 3, but I already played it a decade ago. What else was I supposed to play on my Wii U at the time? Like, if you have a PS5, you played either Spider-Man 2 or Final Fantasy 16, because why else did you buy this thing? I played Spider-Man 2. It was good. I enjoyed it. I don't know how else to describe this game other than it's like the first two games, but more. All the good qualities of the first two are still here. The story is great. It's fun to move around New York to the point where I forgot you can fast travel. You feel like Batman, all that stuff. It just doesn't do enough new for me. Like, you'd think that the symbiote powers would spice things up, but not really. They mainly just end up being better gadget attacks. The story is also pretty good. I mainly just think Venom should have been there longer. The last act of the game just goes by so quickly that this version of Venom doesn't have enough time to make a decent impression. At least beyond causing tons of chaos and just generally being a menace to society. I did enjoy Spider-Man 2 quite a bit, but it left me feeling kind of empty. Like, there should have been more here. Which is insane to think about, because this game apparently had a budget of like $300 million, and it does not feel like it did. It seems like they're trying to shake things up a bit for the next one, which is desperately needed in my opinion. They knocked the formula and gameplay style so out of the park with the first game that it's hard to improve on it aside from pacing. Miles Morales is still my favorite game in the series because of that. Everything just feels so well paced. But hey, Spider-Man 2 is still pretty good. Just don't leak the prototype for the next game, please. Spider-Man 2 had an absurd budget, so let's look at the polar opposite of the money spending spectrum with Undertale Yellow, an Omori fan game. Now, gameplay-wise, this is pretty much as Undertale. It doesn't do too much new aside from a Guitar Hero minigame for a boss, but it's insane how high quality this is. You could have told me this was an official game in the series, and I'd believe you. It also avoids the fanfiction woes that come with fan game territory by focusing on original characters. It's hard to be like, Sans Undertale would never eat a hot dog when he's not even there, you know? You essentially go through the same journey in the underground as an Undertale, but you're in different parts of each area and talking to new people to the point where it feels like a totally different place. It's not gonna blow your mind if you played Undertale or Deltarune already, but it's essentially a new take on the original game with bizarrely higher production values than the original game. Honestly, if this was a $15 game, I'd pay for this, which is the highest praise I could possibly give a fan game. Let's end this on a game I'll probably keep playing well into next year. Or is it this year? Whatever, you know what I mean. I'm the most stereotypical Smash player ever. This is the only fighting game I've ever been into. I saw this meme that was like, Smash players don't shower because they can't do a quarter circle to turn it on. It's insane to me that I understand this now. I've dabbled into other fighting games on occasion. I thought Pokémon Tournament was kind of fun. I played Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 when I first got my PlayStation Vita for a bit. I am the only person who played the game this way. Although I did buy the PS4 version eventually. I also had some fun with BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, but that was mainly because of the mentally ill concept of a Persona 4 Ruby crossover. I didn't care about BlazBlue, no one cares about Under Night. I just wanted to experience a playable fever dream. So here we are at Guilty Gear Strive. Elphelt was announced as a DLC character for the game, then I kept seeing fan art of her on Twitter, and before I knew it, I bought the game on sale for $20. I haven't been quite the same since. With every other fighting game I've played aside from Smash, I started to get bored around 15 hours or so and don't want to play anymore. Not Strive. At like 20 hours, I was like, no, me want more. Me want to get better. Me want the DLC. Me also want to play as Bridget and Elphelt and Johnny and Sin. This game may or may not be my personality right now. I don't know what it is about this game. With most fighting games, I get intimidated looking at combo lists being like press left, down, right, then B. Because my brain is like, how am I supposed to memorize this, then execute this during actual gameplay? Apparently, if you instead illustrate that you're supposed to make a half circle motion with a D-pad, it's simple. Why have fighting games made this sound so complicated? It helps that Guilty Gear doesn't usually ask the player to input tons of buttons in a row. You instead have a bunch of different attacks you can string together if you get good enough at a character. Keep in mind, I don't know, fighting games, this could be all pretty standard stuff by now, but Strive made it all make sense to me. Like, when you get decent in the game and you're stringing together attacks and landing specials mid-combo, you feel like a god. It's a fighting game that's pretty easy to pick up and play that still has a lot of depth once you get really into it. So at this point, I think I'm just cursed to be a Mei main. At first, I played her because of memes. I wish I was this good at this game. But then I ended up liking her because her stronger, slower attacks meant that I didn't have to be that good at combos. And then I figured out how her dolphins work, and she felt like a completely different character. And then I found out you can buffer the holding backwards input to charge up a dolphin during any animation, including before you're allowed to play the game, and she felt like a completely different character again. Like, you can fire off this thing in literally the first frame of the match. It's so stupid. I love doing it. And then I figured out how to combo decently with her and do this forward dash thing using the burst meter, and she felt like a completely different character again. Apparently most characters are like this, but they just evolve the more you learn how they work. And basically every character is fun to play as, and they're all totally unique. The online play is great too. It has rollback netcode for the matches, and everything is stupidly smooth. Even when the opponent has an awful connection, it's still a pretty good time. I will never play Smash Online ever again. And the ranking system is really well designed. Instead of telling you how much better you are than everyone else, there's this tower where your rank determines the lowest floor that you can enter. Meaning that if you're ranked 4 and think you're hot shit, you can challenge someone at rank 7 and realize you're actually garbage at this game. But because the lowest floor you can enter is 4, you can't curb stomp someone you're obviously better than unless they've chosen to go to a higher floor. According to this game, I'm a 6 out of 10 player, which is probably true. It's a simple but well thought out system that pits you against players around the same skill level as you so that everyone can have a good time. I was having such a good time, in fact, that I even started going into the lore. Fighting games have always had insanely stupid lore, mainly because it's probably stuff they came up with after making fun characters to play as, so it's just one of those things like, okay, so playing as a Velociraptor is cool, but how do we make this canon to Tekken? Keep in mind, I have not played any other Guilty Gear game, I just watched the Wooly Versus videos. In fact, Strive just has a 4-hour movie for story mode, which I have not gone around and watching yet. I probably will eventually, I'm a little too addicted to the actual game to watch it. So, like, there's this ninja guy named Chip, right? Well, apparently he is the president of an African kingdom that he named after himself. Axel Lowe can manipulate time not because he's British, but because he happens to have the same user ID as Eno in the magical computer simulation I think they're all living in. But Kai Kisei is the most insane out of any character, because this man married a 4-year-old. I know that sounds bad, but it's actually incredible character development. Where are you going? So, Kai's parents were killed by gears, or these biologically engineered living weapons, and he spent his teens and early 20s being completely bloodlusted and wanted to kill all the gears. Gears reach adulthood in 3 years, and he met Dizzy, who is a gear, and then they fell in love after Kai was like the second person who didn't see her as a monster. He goes from hating all gears to falling in love with one who is biologically and mentally about the same age as him. It's very sweet, but it is also a hilariously out of context true statement. But then they had a child who's 5 years old in Strive, but looks only a little younger than Kai. I assumed Sin was Kai's brother, but he's actually his son. But Sin was raised by Soul because Kai is a king and society cannot accept that he loves someone that's viewed as a monster. But also Soul is really Sin's grandfather and Kai's father-in-law. Like, you need a degree in literature to understand Soul Bad Guy's family tree. Can you tell I like this game? Normally, I only write 1 paragraph per game, but this time I wrote 2. I even bought all the current DLC after like 2 weeks of playing it, and it's kind of making me want to try and get into other fighting games. Anyway, play Guilty Gear Strive or I'll have May release the Dolphins. Last but not least, it's time for the games I didn't really have much to say about bonus round. Kirby's Return to Dreamland. I made a 27-minute review of this game. Similarly, I also made a 15-minute review of Bomb Rush Cyberfunk. I don't feel like regurgitating those videos, so go watch those. Metroid Prime Remastered is an insanely good remake of Metroid Prime. I was kind of annoyed it was only the first game, and after seeing gameplay of it, I am perfectly okay with waiting for a Prime 2 Remastered if it looks this good. The new dual-stick controls with gyro is a pretty good substitute for the Wii pointer too. So yeah, technically the best version of the game, but the Wii version's still pretty good. Super Mario RPG Remake is in the same boat. It's a pretty modernized version of the original, but it's not blowing your socks off if you already played the original like I have. Unless you're that guy who constantly asks for Geno and Smash for over a decade, in which case, good for you, you deserve this game. But I never really cared about Mario RPG that much. I like Paper Mario or Mario Luigi way better. I'm just still processing that this remake exists at all. The most Nintendo ever acknowledged that this game exists is a Geno cameo in Superstar Saga and a Mii costume in Smash. This game still doesn't feel real. Please inject Thousand Year Door HD directly into my veins. Vampire Survivors is basically a game where you run around in circles, but it is the most fun running around in circles could possibly be. It's like this weird idle game where we still need to kind of pay attention to it. So it's a fantastic play while you're watching TV kind of game. I didn't really care about it that much though, mainly because it occupies this weird limbo where it requires just enough of my attention to not hold my attention for long. But hey, a few hours of brainless fun is enough to justify the $5. Pokemon Brilliant Diamond. Look at how they massacred my boy. Literally all they had to do was make a glorified remaster of Platinum, and they couldn't even do that. It is Diamond and Pearl, more or less how you remember it, all while pretending that the better version of the game doesn't exist. Even if they removed HMs, made the battles way faster, that doesn't mean much when the Force Experience share makes the game brain dead easy. I thought X and Y were easy, but you at least had the option to allow you to use your brain. By the mid-game, I was actively avoiding every trainer just to try and make this interesting, but even that was kind of hard to do by that point. I guess it makes me appreciate all the improvements made to Platinum, but it honestly just makes me mad they didn't even bother trying to base it off of the obviously better version of the game. That's my short rant for now. When I eventually get to reviewing Platinum, I will complain about Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl a lot. Believe me. A game that I have less opinions on is Sonic Superstars because I have literally no take on it. I played like 90% of it, I think, and I was like, wow, this is indeed a video game. I don't know what else to say about this thing. I didn't like it, I didn't dislike it, I just consumed it and forgot that I even played it. I don't know what else to expect from the same developers that brought us Hey Pikmin. Good thing I got it on sale for $30. I don't know why this is a $60 game. I don't have much to say about Dragon Ball FighterZ either. I got into Dragon Ball a few months ago and my one friend basically peer pressured me into buying it after playing Guilty Gear. One of my friends gonna start telling me to do drugs instead of anime. Anyway, the game's fun, but it mostly feels like a press buttons until you win kind of game. If it wasn't for the fact that this game feels like you're playing a Dragon Ball fight, which to be fair is kind of the point, it would probably feel a bit shallow to me, at least on the surface. Keep in mind I've only played this for like 2 hours so far, so I might as well have not played it. Anyway, I'm going back to the Guilty Gear cave. I should probably play more Persona 5 Tactica on the side though. It's like this Persona spinoff is kind of like XCOM, but I haven't played XCOM, so it feels like Mario Rabbids to me. It's one of those games that doesn't seem that good looking at it, but then you play it and start to understand the flow of everything, and it's actually pretty fun. The game's really easy, but there comes a lot more challenge trying to finish all the bonus objectives for each mission. It's usually get through with no deaths under a certain amount of turns, but it does make it a lot more engaging. It almost feels like a puzzle game at times. I wasn't big on the art style, but it did grow on me. I'm only like 5 hours into the game right now, but I definitely want to play this one more. This year was pretty garbage aside from video games, so it's nice that I can end on something that I've been having a fun time with. And for anyone who's curious, here's a tier list of everything I talked about today. Sorry, podcast listeners. And now, a moment of silence for the games I wanted to play but didn't, for one reason or another. You might want to sit down for this one, there's a lot of them. Pikmin 4, Final Fantasy 16, Advanced Wars Reboot Camp, Ghost Trick, Bayonetta Origins, Armored Core 6, Sea of Stars, Baldur's Gate 3, System Shock Remake, Resident Evil 4 Remake, Gravity Circuit, Slay the Princess, Street Fighter 6, Baten Kaitos 1 and 2, Lethal Company, Pseudo Regalia, Dave the Diver. 2023 was definitely a year. It felt like a year where I didn't play very many video games, but that was clearly not the case. There were points where I actually did just go like a week without playing any video games just because I didn't feel like it. I don't know, maybe it just felt like less because I was doing things other than playing video games. Like, dude, I just read a book. What is happening to me? 2023 was pretty garbage life-wise for a lot of people, it seemed like. I was struggling to find a job and generally sitting around feeling worthless a lot of the time. And most of my friends didn't fare that much better. I didn't want to end this on such a sour note considering how positive I've been throughout this, but 2023 was not a great year aside from video games. Let's hope 2024 is better. We keep saying this every year, but hopefully it sticks this time. There actually aren't many games coming out in 2024 that I want. Maybe like 4, 5 of the new Peach games actually decent. And now that I'm thinking about this, 3 of those are remakes or remasters. But after 2023, I could really use a year to catch up on stuff I missed out on. This is the first year I can't say that I'm excited for Breath of the Wild 2. I just need to process that, okay? It's been fun. Take care, everyone.